low-hanging fruit, but would be Justin Fields because it tells you everything they want to do. It feels like with him, they're going to come out and tell you that they are going to run a ton of 12 personnel and they are going to run the shit out of the football with both the quarterback, multiple running backs with 2 tight ends on the field. And that would kind of give you a trickle effect signing where if you got Fields, you're looking at it and thinking like, okay, whatever tight end, say they signed a Juwan Johnson, right, who's really a bigger wide receiver, that would tell me they are going to draft one of the premier blocking tight ends in the draft because you have to have that guy in that kind of offense. There's hints you get from a Field signing. There's hints you get from certain signings where that guy plays such a certain style. It kind of gives away what you want your DNA and identity and scheme to be. So that's what I look for in free agency. As I've done more of the draft, now that I'm ranking literally over 300 players every year, doing a full season of fantasy and college, and doing the draft full all year round, like, it's great that we have a great team at Badlands, like you guys, that do so much free agency. I like reacting to the signings. I'll do film breakdowns for a couple key Jet signings if they make them. But it's weird to like study the entire pool for a new regime, a scheme we haven't seen because Engstrand hasn't been a play caller in the NFL yet, and go like, this guy has to be here. They probably are trying to kind of figure that out as you go. That's what's so tricky about this. And then after a year or two, you get to watch the tape of what they're trying to do, and you can start to plug puzzle pieces into the exact packages they want to run.
A couple other names I think you'll probably hear mixed with the Jets. DJ Jones, Poona Ford. Jeremy
I've always
Chin.
loved Poona Ford.
Yeah.
Like,
feels like we're due for a 1 year with Poona Ford. Get him up in the rotation.
There's your fat guy up front.
Yes. Any fat guy you see on the market, any safety, like, they'll be linked with the Jets. And look, it's certainly a fascinating first domino, like you said, would be Fields. And it was interesting. I did a Twitter poll over the weekend. Who do you think the Jets starting quarterback will be week 1? And it was Tyrod, Fields, another veteran, or a rookie. And a very big share went to Fields. And there's been some light rumblings. The Jets will be interested in Fields. He could go back to Pittsburgh. I'm sure other teams will be interested. Darnold is the biggest quarterback name on the market. I don't think he's coming back to the Jets. I think
just
most
rule
people
it out.
agree with that. It's not going to happen. You sign Fields to like the 1 year, I don't know what it is, 1 year, $18 million deal or something like that. Like you said, then it's like, okay, we have Fields, we have Tyrod, we have Brees, Braylon, Isaiah Davis. We'll load up at tight end. We'll figure out right tackle. And we're just going to beat the shit out of teams and run the ball and play better defense and specials while we figure everything out. Would be interesting. I think it's more likely than not Fields isn't the quarterback, but would not be shocked if they tried to be proactive in saying, like, look, we think we're going to run a very specific scheme with this guy. We know he's a first-round talent, and was a first-round talent. Doesn't mean that he's going to play to that standard, but we know what he is, and we know he can be a certain version of an NFL quarterback if they feel that way. And that would be a really interesting tell early in free agency. We also don't know exactly how this regime feels about Tyrod. Like, they didn't sign him to the 2-year deal. We could guess most people kind of feel the same way around the league about Tyrod because he's been around for so long.
He's really well liked.
Yeah. Very well liked. I am sure they have a similar assumption that if you promise them Tyrod could start 17 games, they would say, we think we can go 9-8 with Tyrod and break this playoff drought. But you got to bet you're getting half that. And then you got to say, can Fields give us the other 9 games, 8 games? And can we play a certain way and win with that? We'll see. I mean, that of course would get all the buzz and all the headlines. It would be quite ironic after everything that happened in that Zach Wilson, Justin Fields draft. And look, I think the Jets, coming off the Jason episode, like, they're gonna have some money to spend. Like, I don't think they're gonna go crazy, but you want to have some like identity signifiers with your new regime and
turn things over.
Yeah. Who are the guys that are coming over that are going to represent your style of play? Is it a Barnes, a Hufanga? Is it a certain offensive lineman they try to go get, a certain style of pass catcher they go get that's going to show, we're going to play this way and this style? And who are those first calls to are always interesting to see. And they're very hard to predict. I think, like you said, we got to see where the dominoes actually fall for this regime because we just don't know. Everything's guessing. These guys have never been a general manager or head coach before. And this collection of people who are making the decisions, which is Muji, Patton, Spielman, Glenn, Engstrand, Wilkes, they've never been mixed together to make uniform calls for a team. So we can look at certain positions where the Jets pretty clearly need help and make some guesses, but of all the top 100 free agents, they're going to sign, I don't know, 3, maybe. And then there's going to be a couple other ones that we don't even expect and aren't even ranked. You get the Isaiah Oliver signings and some of those other guys who end up playing
Sure.
an inordinate amount. So I'll close with this. Just a couple random names if you think they'll be back or not on the current Jet roster. Just go rapid fire to take us home here. And always our 4 to 5 minute epilogue after I say we're going to take it home. Tyler Conklin.
No.
Okay. Morgan Mo.
You got to be
ahead.
like, if you're not a good blocking tight end, you need to be a real difference making pass catcher. And Conklin, once upon a time, was right around that line, but I just don't think that's the case anymore.
Morgan Moses.
I know Connor Hughes, I believe, right? Unless I want to make sure he didn't get aggregated wrong because you got to be careful with that. But there was definitely some chatter that signs don't point that way. Man, I think that's a big mistake. I would like him back and draft a day 2 guy rather than going, hey, let's see what happens at right tackle. But I'll go with that news front and say, no, I don't think so.
Sherwood.
I'll say yes. I think Sherwood might be one of those cases that he gets to the market. There's some good offers out there, but maybe it's just best for both sides that he's back, and it's not, I don't think it's going to be the contract that people are expecting kind of case. I'm trying to think the last time this happened with the Jets where you were like, oh, guy's going to test the market, and then all of a sudden they do, and then 48 hours later, it's like, you found common ground. It wasn't really that difficult to figure out.
I mean, those are kind of the main 3 where I think there's some drama. DJ Reed's not going to be back. Hassan Reddick's not going to be back. We got a question in the Discord if you would bring him back, and I immediately in all caps said, no, absolutely not. Get him the hell as far away from this franchise as possible. I never want to talk about that dude again.
He might, like, if he doesn't want to play for a $3 million deal, he might not be playing football next year.
Yeah. We know Lazard's going to be gone. Adams, the question is, like, can they get a late round pick for him? You get a 5th, 6th. I don't know. Probably not, but not writing it off fully. So we know they're going to be gone. It leaves bare bones at the, in the receiver room, which is why they have to go be proactive. Not a lot of drama beyond that, beyond like cleaning out Kinlaw, Saul Thomas, and hopefully proactively cleaning out Clemens. And that's kind of it. There's not like, I think they're going to start over a kicker. I think they're going to start over maybe a punter. I mean, Morstead's fine, but whatever. Like, they need a returner. But those
depth
are not
O-line. I will
depth
watch
O-line's
closely.
important. Yep.
The Lions, as everybody famously knows, if you watched any Lions game, they run a lot of 6th offensive linemen, and I don't know if that guy is on the roster right now. Yeah. So, let alone that the starting right tackle is not on the roster, but that's a whole nother conversation. It's easier to go find depth offensive linemen in free agency. There's rarely ever starters at tackle. I know they hit on Simpson last year. I'll say one more thing with Fields, because I know you were saying it's more likely that he's not, and that's just you're playing the field. Like, you're going with like the field versus one team, so that makes sense. The more I thought about it, and I don't know the Jets' level of interest. I will ask around about this at the Combine for sure. Man, like, if it's not Pittsburgh, and we had Jay Glazer on Fantasy Football Happy Hour, and I asked about Fields and Russ going back to the Steelers, and at the time, things changed. He didn't really seem like that was happening, although I don't know what the Steelers are going to do if that's not the case. Like, if you're Justin Fields, the number one thing you care about, right, is playing. That's the number one thing in free agency. You want to go somewhere where you're going to play. Because if you're him, you probably thought I was playing okay last year and I got benched. And because you're young, you want to play. You look around, like, you don't know if all the quarterback needy teams are going to be interested in him because he's a very specific quarterback in terms of what he's shown. It doesn't mean he can't grow into a more prolific NFL passer, but what he's shown so far, he had one season at Ohio State where him and Garrett were very good together. I don't know. If I was him, I'd look at him and be like, man, I could do a lot worse than going to be the starter for the Jets.
Yeah.
Where all these
1 year prove it deal. And
all these other places come with they have that young guy in the wings, or, they have a top 5 pick and might take one, or I got to go sit behind someone and hope for an injury. There's not a lot of places and then factor in Darnold's going to go somewhere and be a starter. Like, somewhere that you think would be interested in Fields is the Darnold landing spot. So I don't know what the Jets think yet, but if I'm on the field side, I'm looking at it and going like, that actually is probably the one place where I can play. And it's not a shit offense right now. Like Garrett Wilson is there. They have 4 good starters on the offensive line. They have running backs. Play calling needs to show something. I'm not going to annoy anyone yet, but I don't know. I think the Jets are in a very unique spot where they are actually enticing to a free agent quarterback. They're not number 1 necessarily, but they're at least, a solid place.
It'd be really interesting. I got to put a little more mind share into Fields being here and how I feel about it. He was a guy that we spent a lot of time talking about, the Zach Wilson year. There's actually an emergency podcast we did deep in our archives right after he lit it up in the national championship game.
Phenomenal.
Us, excited about him potentially going to before it just turned into the Zach Wilson inevitable pick. And he's been very uneven. There's certain things he does very well and uniquely well. His ability to run the football is elite at times. I think about like the game that sticks in my head is what he did to the Patriots a few years ago in primetime, where he just sort of ran all over them and like took over the game in that way.
He had confidence.
Very limited as a thrower. I don't think anyone's acting like he's not, but I'm more open-minded to these like reclamation swings after seeing what's happened with Geno and after seeing what's happened with Darnold to an extent. And like, I just wonder, curated in the right situation, can he operate a certain type of offense and bring certain explosiveness with his legs and periodic downfield passing with a receiver he's very comfortable with, where you could do a lot worse? And I think between him and Tyrod, if you're carving up 17 games, I think you could be pleasantly surprised. So I don't want to act like, it was always should have been Fields. He's going to be awesome when he gets here. Like, he has a hell of a lot to prove, especially as a passer. But at a minimum, man, you want to talk about a way to wear a defense down, tackling Breece and Justin Fields and Braylon Allen over and over and over again. If you have your offensive line right, there's something there. So I do think the Jets are going to be in those conversations. And like you said, does he want to go to the Raiders? Does he want to go to the Titans? Like, does he want to go to the Browns? Like, I tell you what, like, I'd be much more excited about Fields than like a Kirk Cousins or something like that. Go with the athleticism, go with the mobility, go with some type of upside because he's still young and at that phase of his career. And I feel like in today's NFL, man, you really got to be able to move. You got to be able to improvise and create with your feet and make something out of nothing. Fields is certainly far from perfect, but it's an interesting one to watch and would be a fascinating first domino for this Jets offseason. The first one. Yeah.
He helps you establish, even if you know the shortcomings that are part of his game and limitations, I think he helps the offense establish a certain mentality that, like, we got to go to win. We have to go out and be the bullies on the field. And Detroit has taken on that mindset after years of building it. There are a lot of teams around the NFL. Buffalo's gotten a lot better at it. Yep. Buffalo a couple years ago was like, hey, Josh Allen, drop back and do shit. Now Buffalo, almost to a fault sometimes, are this, we can line up six offensive linemen and push you around and bully you. So obviously the Eagles, that's an easy low-hanging fruit one, but it would make you play a certain way where then when the next guy comes in, the guy that you draft, you can play that way already while he is developing as a passer with more upside. So that would be my thought process on going that route, besides the fact that the pool at large is wildly uninspiring from a free agency and draft perspective this specific year.
Yeah, it's a little easier to picture the Fields Tyrod training camp push versus Cooper Rush or Jarrett Stidham.
I love when you bring that name up.
I just I can't because I can't shake it because I can see the Jet. Yeah. Maybe Muji has no interest in him. It's just the ties. It scares me. All right, we're gonna go record Ward Room, which is going to be a little more NFL draft centric. I'll close with, before I got on, I was telling Connor this because I just have to share this story. I'm traveling a little bit for work this week, similar to CR, and my 4-year-old peed in my Nikes. Now, I'm a 37-year-old, not cool person at all. I have 9 crappy pairs of sneakers that I've had forever that I periodically work out, and I have 1 nice pair of Nikes that I got like a year ago, and my 4-year-old just peed in them. And I was going to get mad at him, and I did get mad at him for a minute, but it was sad because I'm traveling. But why that means he peed in my shoes, I don't know. I think he just was too lazy to walk downstairs and was drinking too much.
It's the cleanest looking urinal.
Cleanest looking urinal. Like, literally just stood up, and peed into my shoes.
That's incredible.
And his older brother was more than happy to tell on him. And I told him I was going to record this so he could come back and watch it 5-6 years from now and be the necessary embarrassment come from a 4-year-old peeing in my shoes. So the shoes have been thrown out. They're not salvageable. I do need a new pair of Nikes, and I buy them few and far between because, again, I am a 37-year-old and I don't know how many more years I have left of wearing Nikes without looking a little bit ridiculous. But that's my Sunday night right now, dealing with pea-soaked Nikes and then maybe watching a little White Lotus and hoping for some interesting rumors coming out of the combine before we go over to War Room. So thank you, Luca. I recorded this when you were 4 and you were still peeing in your dad's shoes. Thank you, everyone. We will talk to you soon.